Welcome to the Waves of Innovation podcast. In this episode, I am talking to Hannah Foxwell, who has an absolute wealth of experience across the industry. Hannah currently runs AI for the Rest of Us, a community and a conference that aims to make AI accessible to everybody. Stick around until the end to receive a discount code from the upcoming AI for the Rest of Us conference in October in London. Hannah likes to keep herself busy. She's also an advisor at two AI startups, one of which is Leapter, a German company that has just received pre-seed funding of 2 million euros, and they take a very different approach to Gen AI in coding. They go for a visual-first system of building logic blueprints from which code is derived, rather than going from code upwards. She is also an advisor at Helix ML, which is a self-hosted turnkey AI platform solution. Hannah has done everything from waterfall project management early in her career to getting involved in DevOps and starting her own DevOps consultancy, being involved in DevOps Days London for many years in a row. She has also been a product manager. She's been a director of professional services, in which she helped people with platform as a product, which in turn brought her into the team topologies community. So in terms of different methodologies and ways of doing things that have changed in the last 15 years in the IT industry, Hannah has seen a lot of things, and hopefully you'll benefit from that in this episode. Hannah Foxwell, AI for the Rest of Us. It's a conference, it's a meetup, it's a website, it's a newsletter, it's a community. Tell us all about it.
Yes, I was supposed to be taking a career break last summer, but apparently I'm not very good at sitting still and doing nothing. And so I thought to myself, I need a project. And AI for the Rest of Us was really born out of my own personal experience and my own need to learn more about AI and to become fluent in AI. So I went to a conference last spring, it was actually, and I sat in on some talks about AI, and I was absolutely bamboozled by all of the new words and terminology. And this is me, having worked in tech my entire career, led software development teams. I realized I had this massive blind spot. I sat there and I literally Googled the word inference, because the person was on the stage using this word as though everybody had been using this word forever. And for me, I don't know how, but I did not know what that word was. I was like, what is this? They are talking about inference as a service, like what? And so I was like Googling that, and all of these other words like quantization and stuff. And I was like, what? Like, this is bonkers. This is a whole new land. And so I tried to find, like, after this moment of realization that I knew nothing, I tried to find resources that would basically teach me what I needed to know about AI, but without all of like really complicated and deep linear algebra. Sort of conceptually, I can think about how a neural network would work, but I'm never going to build one. I'm never going to build a machine learning model. I'm never going to sort of fine tune something. This is not the level I need. I need to know from a technology point of view, what can it do for me? How do I work with it? Like safely, securely? What about scalability? What is it good for? What is it not good for? What are the risks and pitfalls? And I was looking for that and I couldn't find it. And so I decided to create it. So AI for the Rest of Us is basically a very selfish product because it's for people like me. I don't want it dumbed down to the magical black box does magic, but I also don't need to know the very, very deep level of how the internals of the model works. I guess it's about how do we build with this technology rather than how do I use this technology. It's a slightly different thing. So yes, I ran the first conference. You were there last October, and it was fabulous. And so I decided to keep going. I was like, there's obviously a need here. As more and more people have those moments that I had of like, oh gosh, I've got a massive blind spot here. More and more people are drawn to this community. And we're now over 850 people in the meetup community. And the second edition of the conference has been announced. We've got some incredible speakers coming along. And again, it's with the absolute same intent as it always has been, to create a really non-judgmental, accessible, practical AI learning experience. So you can actually start to navigate this new domain so that you can learn the language, and so that we can all basically have better conversations and make better decisions about how we use AI now.
The thing about, I think we were talking earlier about AI fluency in the language and understanding, it certainly seems to be the case that because there's such a wide hubbub in the general population. The politicians are talking about it, newspapers are talking about it, social media is full of it. Everybody knows that AI is a thing. Lots of people are slightly fuzzy about what exactly it can and can't do. And even from the technologist perspective, for practitioners, a lot of the terms are not very well defined. You read things like the O'Reilly AI engineering book, and there's so many disclaimers in there of like, well, this term is used by this bunch of people to mean this thing, and this exact same term is used to mean something completely different over there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is a forever problem in tech, but it's useful actually that book gives a bit of a disclaimer about it. To these populations, these things mean these, because that's it's very contextual, isn't it?
Yeah, and the people cannot make good use of the technology if they can't talk about it, really. Like, to your point about knowing enough to not just what can I do with it, but what can I build with it. So I'm not just necessarily a consumer, but I'm somebody that can actually apply this to more important things. And actually, there's a thing there about ownership and of having agency over your AI future. If you know how to compose things and what you can build with it, that's different to just being a passive consumer of like, hey, I've got a ChatGPT subscription and I can ask it questions.
Well, the thing is, there's so many jobs that are genuinely going to be reshaped and disrupted by AI tools, and we're only just at the beginning of this. There's innovative companies who are placing bets and getting really good results with AI agents, with AI automated workflows, even like AI coding assistants. It's touching lots and lots of different careers and jobs and domains, and it's doing it all simultaneously. And I think that, one of the things, having worked in transformation, from a technology point of view, is that, you will always have your early adopters and then your sort of lagging majority, but you get to sort of help shape the future if you sort of lean in and you're part of the conversation. I do talk about this because it's something that I remember very vividly about the early days of DevOps. Reading the book Continuous Delivery and taking it back to your waterfall organization and going, I believe this is a better way. And it was really culty. But I feel like we're really at that point with AI at the moment. And I'm like, let's build some agents. I believe it is possible. And I've seen just enough to believe. But yeah, if you want to take your career in that direction, there's no end of opportunities because there is such a skills gap. And it's not all about engineering. Like, I'm not an engineer. I wouldn't say that. I'm very comfortable working with engineers because I speak their language. And that's sort of the same with AI. I want to be able to speak that language so I can work with the tech and work with the tools and make sense when I'm having a dialogue with experts.
The point about the fact that there's ways that you can take your career in AI-related directions, that's sort of multidimensional in that, we both come from a tech background doing cloud and platform and transformation and that sort of thing. So there's a natural kind of inclination to think about developers and how they're using Gen AI. But then there are so many other job roles and industries and sectors where people are going to be able to leverage this technology to make themselves more productive. And although it was from a tech background, I was talking to a chap called Elliot Beattie the other day, who works for a company called Fruition. And he made a good point in regards to software developers, that senior developers are not going to get replaced by AI. They're going to get replaced by other senior developers that leverage Gen AI. So if you're not keeping contemporary with the tools that are available and the possibilities there, then that's a potential risk to your employability in future.
It is. Again, there's the two dimensions. There's the developers who are using AI to assist them in their work. And then there's the developers who are really curious to build solutions with these underlying technologies as kind of components. I can integrate with an LLM through an API. Fantastic. What can I build with that? There's so much opportunity there. But going back to how we remain sort of relevant in our jobs, I do think that the toolkit for a developer has changed now, and there's techniques that you can use to get the best out of AI coding assistants like Cursor and things like that. And I think those are some of the emerging practices that aren't actually mainstream yet. We talk about vibe code, where it's just I'm paying no attention, blah, blah, blah. And the other end of the spectrum is I'm very intentional and specific about what I want the code to look like and how I want it to work. And those folks are getting better results because you're not delegating a lot of the important decision making to an LLM. You're guiding it. It is just part of our toolkit now, and I think those are emerging practices. But eventually, those emerging practices will be the things that we teach juniors. But we haven't figured out what those emerging practices are because the underlying technology changes so quickly and so fundamentally that you think you've kind of grasped it, and then a new model will come out that's better at some other things. So I think it will stabilize, and then these emerging practices for AI driven and prompt driven software development will be the things that we teach our juniors, and everything will be normal again. We just have a different tool in our toolkit. But this transition phase is messy. And so I guess the only thing that you can do if you're a software developer today is to like really experiment. And if you figure out a way of getting the best out of these tools, share it, because you're establishing yourself as like a person who is useful for navigating change. And that's something that's forever true in technology, isn't it?
Absolutely. The point about juniors and this transition period being a little bit rough. I would not want to be a junior developer right now. I really feel for the people that have kind of just come out of university, just come out of a coding boot camp. They know how to program, but need more guidance and tutoring. That is going to be a really tricky situation to be in, because going to your point about the techniques that you can use to guide Gen AI in the coding process, it's a lot like breaking down a backlog into really granular stories for the sake of keeping a junior developer on track. Very explicit outcomes. This is exactly how I want you to do it. Go and fill in the gaps. So I know people, like friends that we have in common, who have said that I was looking at hiring a junior. I reckon I can now address that capacity problem with Gen AI. So instead, I'm going to hire someone more senior and hire for capability rather than capacity.
I mean, that's tactical, isn't it? But not great long term. Like, we need a talent pipeline. We are going to, we're not going to have enough developers in the world if we don't bring the next generation on. But yeah, you're right. It's kind of the new normal where we have to make those trade-offs. And I think denying it is also a bit naive, where we can say, okay, there's this amount of work that AI tools can do in any job. This isn't just about developers. AI can do pretty reliably. To think that we are going to go backwards and start giving those jobs to humans again is a bit naive. I think that's the new normal. And I think what we haven't done is we haven't caught up with the education we need so that people can come in at that level that's one notch above the AI tools, because that's where we start to add the value again. There are companies today that hire juniors and don't do a very good job of training them and supporting them. And so those companies are not going to get any better with AI tools. It would be disappointing if we had companies that were great at bringing on juniors and training them who abandoned that as a capability. But yes, money is money. If you have choices to make about where to spend it, then maybe make choices differently now.
You have seen the transition, the advent of DevOps. Was that your first foray into the tech industry, or were you already doing things before that?
So yeah, kind of. It was a bit of a crossroads in my career, because I started off working at Tesco.com. So I was helping the Tesco groceries sort of online business, and I was working within that tech delivery team. And that was during a time when we were going through like agile transformation and things like that. We were really lucky in this one program of work that I worked on where we had a greenfield project. So it was the international grocery businesses. So we had a very, very unique sort of project from the perspective that there was no technology there. And so we could adopt a lot of new practices. And that was really the crossroads where I got very interested in what is the best way to deliver software. So that's my history. That's how I got into continuous delivery, DevOps and transformation, and eventually sort of the cloud native and platform engineering stuff that I've been doing more recently. But yeah, that was like the moment, going from like waterfall delivery and being the project manager of those waterfall delivery plans to a much more automated continuous delivery approach. Like I said, like believing it was possible to do these things differently. And so I think, yeah, going through that once before has kind of helped me see the opportunity with AI maybe, and go like, oh yeah, okay, so this feels like it did 15 years ago with DevOps. This feels like the same thing again. And there are lots and lots of people at the beginning, like when DevOps was like the peak of its hype, who really believed that it was solved. And then it turned out to be a human problem, a cultural problem, a change management problem, as much as it ever was a tools and technology problem. So yes, I think we're all going to go through that messy kind of exploratory phase of AI adoption. And good practices will emerge, and we'll sort of coalesce around technologies, but we're not there yet.
How do you think that the AI native wave, we're not quite sure yet what AI native really means, but the kind of incoming wave of AI innovation, how do you think that compares to like DevOps, the whole cloud native movement, and then AI? In my mind, I can see those getting bigger and having wider impacts. Like DevOps was a kind of niche movement for hardcore engineers. You know, I don't think there were many board members going, "We need to do DevOps." It would be great if they had have done.
It was the opposite. I think our CIO said, "Don't talk to me about DevOps. I don't want to hear it." So no, I actually don't think. I think it's a really, it's instead of all of these like technology transformations that we may have seen firsthand as people who work in technology, cloud and DevOps and Kubernetes and containers and all of that good stuff. Like this is driven top down to a certain point of view. There's so much potential and opportunity now that generative AI has got so good and it is so commoditized that it is so easy to adopt. Everyone is trying to figure out what it means for them. And this is where I go back to the sort of AI fluency thing, because I would not have told you this time last year that I would be working as a sort of AI strategy consultant, but it is a reality. And it's because people need help. And I've spent a year teaching myself about AI and navigating it from an enterprise technology point of view that I'm quite useful already. And I've got less than a year experience because I've invested time in learning how to speak the language. I know enough about the challenges of software development to understand what's realistic and maybe where the opportunities are. So yes, instead of imagining that you're going to automate your entire workforce, like out of a job tomorrow, let's start by incubating some new technologies. Let's bring some skill. Let's upskill. Let's capture some of those repeating patterns and build developer platforms around it. Let's make it really easy for dev teams to consume new services in a standardized way and provide them with education on how to do that safely and securely and reliably, instead of having everyone trying to figure it out for themselves. If I was to give anybody any advice right now, if you're thinking about how you personally in your career navigate this change, it is just that curiosity to learn how to speak this language, because there's not enough people at the moment. There really isn't. And if you can speak the language of AI, you don't need to be a builder. If you can help others navigate it, feel more comfortable with it, help them make decisions around what a good use case is, what it isn't, then you'll be well set. Honestly, you'll be flying. Like everyone needs this right now, and they shouldn't be asking external people. You know, they should be providing their team with enough time to go and explore.
On that note, Elliot, who I spoke to last week, and maybe in the previous episode, maybe the next episode, I don't know which order we're going to release these in. Hopefully in the order we recorded them. Otherwise, this is not going to make very much sense. But he was talking about giving his team AI Thursdays. So do whatever you're doing today, but use AI as part of the solution, whether it's Gen AI for the coding, whether it's implementing a product feature using a model or something like that. And I think those kind of things are going to be important, because with this driven more top down than bottom up, I've been really surprised about, I've worked with some really amazing engineers, fantastic people, much, much smarter than me, which to be fair isn't hard. But they're the kind of curious programmer types that, tinker on things in the evenings and the weekend. And even those folks are not exactly late to the party, but they are only just immersing themselves in it now and starting to see some of the possibilities of having agents that look at your Kubernetes cluster and automatically debug and fix things. So if people like that are only just coming to terms with things, it shows that there's definitely a kind of pent up need for more education and more skills in the workforce.
ChatGPT was released while I was working at Sneak, and I had my blinkers on, a really high pressure role where, I was leading Sneak Container and we had a lot of work to do. Like we were on the critical path for an awful lot of the key initiatives that were at Sneak that year. And, I had laser focus on achieving those things. And I did not have any mental capacity to go and have a little play around with ChatGPT. And I think that's the position that so many people in tech are in, where it's like, I understand the mission. I am focused on the mission. This feels like a distraction right now. And so It's hard, actually. And I think that's why so many companies are opting to do these like hackathons and things like that, where they intentionally create space, because everyone's natural instinct, is to focus on delivery and to stay on track, and to, trashing your roadmap is like one of the hardest things you can do as a product person. Like, just go like, we were wrong. Whoosh, like, let's do this. That's like, but that's what a lot of people are facing right now, as they get to grips with like what's the potential opportunity, what are the problems that we can tackle today that we didn't even dream about yesterday because of this new technology we can use. Trashing your roadmap might be the hard right thing.
Yeah, when you're in that pioneering mode in terms of an incoming wave of innovation, you need to have slack in the system. If you don't have any slack in the system, you can't innovate. You are, maybe you're going to achieve your short-term goals, but it's like a hyper-evolved organism in an ecosystem. A cheetah is very good at one thing, running really bloody fast and catching gazelle or whatever. But any kind of perturbations in that environment, in its ecosystem, it's not a jack of all trades. It doesn't have the ability to do anything else. It's good at one thing and one thing only. So it's in a very fragile position. So I think maybe that's one of the commonalities between, when we think about the advent of DevOps and cloud native and platforms. It was hard for people to be working. I mean, how many times did we see that in the cloud native space of like, oh, I don't have time to automate things. I'm too busy manually fixing problems.
Yeah, it's so true. You do need a bit of slack in the system. I have too many jobs at the moment, but one of them is building teams of AI agents. And I love this because it's the job I do that's really hands-on, and like I can actually do experiments with this tech.
They all have names. I should really not interrupt, but I'm just keen to know. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you've named all of yours.
No. I think of them as tiny little computer programs because that's what they are. But yeah, no, I haven't. They've got very, very functional names. Like, I am the document writer agent and I write the document. Because it's all new and there's no guidebook of how you do this, you're experimenting all the time, like what sort of prompt template shall I use, like what tool configuration, things like that. And you can spend weeks focusing on one small challenge that you thought would be easy. And then the next day, like last week, I got my agent writing a document and it worked first time. And I was like, oh my God, look at it go. It's one of those things. It's you like knock down each barrier as it sort of comes up. It's like, okay, it can do this now. Can it do this next? And you're iterating through it and you've got absolutely no idea how long anything is going to take because it's not standardized. It's not predictable. No one's written you a how-to guide. It's fun, but like you said, you do need that space for experimentation. You can't do this work on a deadline because it's like breaking new ground most of the time. I'm sure there are so many companies out there who have like wrapped up their little solution in a bow. You get the AI business development bots, the ones that do all your cold outreach for you. Someone's wrapped a prompt in a bow and they've sold it to you as a product, basically. They're never going to share how they got that prompt working, are they? That's their IP. And so I do think that there's maybe more sharing that we could be doing about how to get these things working in the real world, but everyone's very protective of that at the moment.
Absolutely. It would be great to have more of that. Are you having a more engineering focused track at AI for the Rest of Us, the conference this year? Is there more of a kind of practitioners one?
So it may be very reflective of my network, but I also think it's reflective of the needs in businesses right now. So last year, 58% of the folks who attended the conference worked in software development, either as engineers, data scientists, product people. They were working in software in some way. And I thought, actually, how do I serve that audience a little bit better and a bit more intentionally this year? And so there'll be a day focused on developer experience and AI tools for the software development lifecycle. So that is everything from AI code generators to automated security to testing. So what can we do to get better at our work as people in software development? And then on the second day, it will be, and this is a question I get asked by a lot of people. It's like, how do I get started with AI engineering? Like, someone's asked me to integrate, and you don't know what you don't know. In that track, we're going to be talking about building a platform around LLMs to make them easily consumable. We're going to be talking about how to write your first eval. We're going to be talking about MCP and how to use that safely and securely, because it's a fantastic standard, but it does leave the front door open somewhat to as an attack vector. So really providing some practical guidance on some of these really common architectural patterns that you might adopt in your organization around large language models, and educating people on how to do that the right way. So that should be good. We also have some technical hands-on workshops as well, which is another new addition. So last year, people asked for hands-on workshops. Instead of having 3 tracks that are all presentation-based, sitting and listening, it's 2 presentation-based tracks and a room dedicated to hands-on workshops so that you can actually get to grips with this technology. So hopefully that format will be even better than last year.
Waves of Innovation by Resync is more than a podcast. It's a growing community where people across tech come together to navigate the AI native wave. If you're enjoying this, then please sign up to our free weekly newsletter, drop into our live events, and keep an eye out for the pattern library and book we're releasing soon. Everything we make is free because no one should surf this wave alone. Thanks for being part of the conversation. Now, back to the episode. Going back to the topic of kind of fluency and the number of different audiences there are, it struck me going to a lot of the London AI meetups that there's such a breadth of people there with very different motivations. You get the kind of individuals who are, I'm going to be an AI entrepreneur. You get occasionally kind of development managers looking like, how do I tell the CEO that we can't get rid of all the developers because of Gen AI? There are people who want advice actually building systems that leverage AI as part of the product offering rather than just using Gen AI as a kind of coding assistant. There's all of these kind of different audiences. Have you spotted any patterns of those kind of ebbed and flowed in terms of the makeup of your meetup and the conference and the community over time, or has it remained fairly constant?
There's 2 answers to this question. So one is yes. I think I have seen a change from people who are maybe just getting started and who are asking more questions about where should I start, to people who are actually doing experiments and getting hands-on with the tech. That's definitely a change. I did not meet many people at the conference last year who were working with AI agents, but we ran a meetup a few weeks ago and there were a handful of people in the room whose job it was, and they were building AI agents. And so that's happened quickly. As an aside, you should have seen the number of submissions to the conference CFP that were about AI agents. I was like, I can't run a conference about just AI agents. It's like, but apparently this is the year of the agent, isn't it? But the other answer to this question, Dad, is actually running an AI conference and running an AI meetup. The audience is very self-selecting, and people who are already curious about AI are showing up. And one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is like, how do I reach out into communities that aren't engaged yet? How do I help the people who are maybe don't know where to begin? How do I help the people who don't understand the opportunity and who could benefit from that opportunity right now? Job seekers, for example. Like, how do I reach them? And that's something that I'm thinking about at the moment, because an AI conference full of AI enthusiasts wouldn't achieve the objective of bringing more people into this world. So yes, answers on a postcard, please. If you're listening to this podcast and you're a member of a community who could really benefit from a boot camp in AI fluency, please drop me a DM. I would love to partner with your community.
It's a tricky problem because the kind of, you can only reach your network easily and directly. And we both worked in tech for decades. So we tend to find that audience quite quickly. But we at Resync, we've been working more with SMEs and people completely outside of the IT sector, people that don't have their own IT departments, don't have any software developers. And the sorts of business value that can be delivered there with kind of tactical business operations solutions, absolutely massive. There's so much opportunity there. And these people know that AI is a thing and that they should probably find out more about it. But actually reaching them, and because it's not one addressable market, you've got like industrial manufacturers, you've got architects, there's all sorts of accountants, there's all sorts of different groups? Have to do a roadshow. Have to go around all the countries.
Again, it's finding getting outside of my bubble. And one of the talks that was submitted, I'm still waiting for this speaker to confirm. I really, really hope he does. Is a guy that has been working with his kids' school to help teachers understand AI and how that it's going to affect their world. And I'm like, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I'm not sure my conference is quite the right target for teachers, but if you're a secondary school teacher and you want to be able to have a good and well-rounded conversation with your students about AI, then absolutely, like my conference and the meetup and the community is a great place to start for that.
It's all very reminiscent of the dot-com boom and the advent of the internet in the mid-90s. And I remember being online well before most of my teachers were, and having to explain to them what a search engine was and where I was pulling this material down that I was printing out to give in my assignments.
It's uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's uncomfortable at work because you can't ask your manager, what should I do with AI? And your manager is uncomfortable because they're like, I can't give you an answer. Like, I don't know. Educators, consultants, like everyone's trying to figure it out at the same time. And honestly, like I think anyone who comes and proposes that they got an answer is probably the person I trust the least, because we are all figuring it out, aren't we? And
absolutely.
It's very situational. And you do, if any of these transformations that we've been through before this have taught me anything, it's that you need to have your eyes open, like, and you need to spot those like emerging patterns of success, and then you need to try them for yourself.
The rate at which the field advances is so rapid. Like the cloud native ecosystem was pretty fast moving, but this is like an order of magnitude harder to keep up with because there are so many different dimensions to it. On that note, keeping up with things, we talked about trying to keep slack in the system, and we mentioned hackathons and kind of AI days. Are there any other patterns that you've seen or success stories that you've seen in prior waves of innovation, be it DevOps, be it cloud native, that you think would be particularly applicable here, or things that you think people should do or consider doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've read team topologies, haven't you?
I have indeed.
So for anyone who is listening and hasn't read Team Topologies, that I cannot recommend it highly enough. That's a great book. There's sort of two patterns in there that I would point to as things that are probably going to play out again with AI. The first one is platforms and kind of removing that additional cognitive load from the teams who are consuming AI. And I think that sits adjacent to the platform engineering domain, but it's almost a specialism within it. Like, how do we build internal tools that help us leverage this technology, but with the right guardrails around them, the right security, the right standards, best practices around reliability, all of that good stuff. Otherwise, you will get 20 teams implementing essentially the same thing in 20 different ways, varying degrees of success. So I think that's probably something that I would say we can expect a bit of that. I actually gave a talk about platform engineering for AI platforms at KubeCon this year. And I think that talk's available on YouTube as well. So making a few predictions about what we've seen before and some of these capabilities in our platform layer that we might want to support. The second is the enabling team. The team who exists in your organization with the purpose of helping other people get to grips with new stuff, helping them evolve, getting their feedback, incorporating that into your internal products and processes. I think the role of the enabling team when it comes to AI is also incredibly important. And that doesn't have to be in the technical domain. If you don't have an enabling team that's helping your business teams and your operations teams be more productive by actually using the tools, then you're probably missing a trick. Having somebody who's internal, like you could get external consultants say they could do training and then they disappear, but like invest in your own people and have them right there on hand as almost power users. That's something that I would love to see more of.
Absolutely. Yeah, you totally read my mind on that one. That enabling team function, I can imagine being super important if we want to see the benefits of AI more broadly than in just software development, where, to be honest, Elliot was talking about velocity gains of 250% in a few months from adopting Gen AI, but I'm not sure that that's going to be where the main productivity gains in general are going to be. It's going to be in the rest of the business that has up until recently kind of been ignored by IT, because solving their problems through handcrafted, very specific software would have been cost prohibitive. Building something that was very specific to a set of requirements, and getting the project management machinery geared up, finding somewhere for it to fit in the product pipeline, and do we have capacity? Do we have availability? All of those sorts of things have kind of gone away now. That well, not gone away, but it's the barrier of entry is so much lower with kind of low code AI based solutions, and even just building things with agents with LLMs in that can meet users where they are. If users want to use Excel to as their primary data source, sure, we can have an LLM read that. It can figure out if you've put the date format in slightly wrong in one of the rows rather than just throwing an error. If you want to interact with it via MS Teams, sure, knock yourself out instead of us building a web UI. So I can imagine that when people talk about trying to reduce developer headcount, I'm really not sure that there's going to be a net reduction. In fact, I think there's probably going to be the opposite, because everyone's going to be out like...
I mean, don't be silly. Have you ever met a team with where you could see the end of the backlog? Like, oh, I think we're done now. Like, I think we've absolutely run out of ideas. No, like every team I've ever worked in has had 2 or 3 years worth of work, and so you make that team more productive. Great, you might get further down that backlog, but it doesn't end. Like, I've never ever known it to end, and so the constraints are what the constraints have always been, which is how much available budget do you have, and are you solving the right problems? I think the budget question is about your situation as a business, but are we solving the right problems becomes even more important, I think, because there's potential to solve a whole lot more of irrelevant problems, and wonder why all of this increase in productivity isn't moving the needle as a business, or isn't moving the needle as a product. So yeah.
Bang on. There's I'm working on a talk about software productivity at the moment, and that's one of the fundamental questions that I keep coming back to, is how rare it is for product initiatives to be clearly aligned with a business outcome and a strategy to try and achieve that. So often it's just like, build the thing. Why? Well, because somebody in charge said that we should. How do we work out if we've actually delivered value or not? If we don't know whether it's useful. It's Pivotal and Pivotal Labs, rest in peace. If it was one thing they were good at, it was what problem are we trying to solve exactly? It's an incredibly important question, and one that sucks the joy out of a lot of creative endeavors. It's I just did it because it was cool and I wanted to. But
yeah. But the thing is, it was with call it vibe coding, low code, or whatever. We can test for a lot lower cost that we're actually solving the right problem. How many features have kind of made it half baked into production and haven't really got the usage because you haven't been able to it's just on to the next thing, because that developer pipeline, that the constraint that you have there, it's we better move on to the next thing, rather than making the thing you're working on really good, actually taking the time to iterate on it and get user feedback. That's a common problem I see, and I think the teams that will really surge ahead with the adoption of AI tools are the ones that have that muscle memory around making data-based decisions, like you said, defining the problem, user research, really, really having a strong kind of culture around making sure that you're building what your users need. I think those folks will have because everything that you do will potentially move the needle. If you're just doing things because the boss said so, or you're not measuring the impact, or you haven't framed what you're building in terms of the business impact you actually want it to have, then you're just a feature factory, and you're an AI powered feature factory now, but you're still a feature factory.
You can do the wrong thing even more quickly now.
Yes, exactly.
One of the things that I find crazy is that genuinely it seems that CEOs are asking CTOs and tech leaders to how many developers can we get rid of now we're using Gen AI? I'm a member of CTO Craft, another great community that tech leaders should probably be a part of. And every few weeks, there's some poor beleaguered tech leader, trying to defend their team from impending cuts. But one thing I really don't understand is how many of those CEOs are already perfectly happy with how much is getting delivered. Like, everything's going fast enough. I don't want it to go any faster. This is fine. So let's just keep things where they are and save some cost. Like, that's never been any CEO ever, right? They've always wanted things to go faster and get to the further down that backlog, like you mentioned.
This may come across as controversial, but I think we're entering a sort of new era for folks in our sort of careers and people who work in tech, especially engineers, because we've been a bit coddled with our beer pumps and our like flexible working, and like, honestly, the luxury of having someone called a scrum master who's there to solve your problems for you, so you don't have to solve them yourself. Like, oh, you've got an impediment, let me take that on for you. Like, oh, we've been so coddled as an industry, and I think the coddling's over. I think we have to deliver impact, and the days of like the diva developers who are coddled and who cannot be like who just work through a backlog of tickets might be over. Actually, if the writing of the code is not your responsibility anymore, then let's reframe our responsibility. It's to our users, it's to our business, and how do we make sure that we're having an impact? So yeah, I think that you're right. There's no CEO ever who's going to go like, "Oh, I don't want to get more done, and I don't want to save money." That's a universal truth, but I think we've been protected from it. I think we've been very sheltered from it because of the skills shortage that we were suffering from, in most part of the last decade. Finding a good developer was so hard, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think it's probably still true. It's just that the conversation has changed.
I do hope that if all of the AI-powered low-code solutions and prototyping tools turn out to be as effective as we hope they are, that in many ways it kind of takes the industry back 30 years. When you read about extreme programming in the original book, the idea of prototyping something next to a business user to kind of go, hey, is this what you want? Sure, great. Okay, no, I'll change that.
Yes.
Yeah, fast feedback on that front. And when you think about what's changed between now and then, building desktop apps or client server apps with a fairly limited architecture was fairly straightforward. But the level of complexity behind the scenes that we've had in the cloud native era and the era of distributed computing has made the barrier of entry and the cost of change so much higher, despite all of the best efforts of people working on automation and CI/CD pipelines and platforms and things like that. It's still massively complicated. And I don't think that complexity's gone away, but it has been kind of hidden a lot better by some of the, AI-powered prototyping tools. So maybe we can go back to a world where we do end up being much more user-focused and customer-focused because we can be in touch with them. We can iterate on their requirements much more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. One company that I work with called Leapter are really taking a very novel approach to that. They've created an interface that almost like is a bit more than like a no-code or low-code tool, but it visualizes the code. So it's like you prompt what you want it to do, and then it visualizes the solution. So you can literally, like, rather than showing a business user lines and lines of code that might have been written by cursor and going like, does that do what you think? Like, you can show a diagram of like, this is the sort of process we're imagining. What have we missed? Like, very visually. That's a lot more human than the way we do software at the moment. At the moment, I think a lot of coding tools, they still imagine that there is an interface between a business person and an engineer in terms of tickets and requirements and things like that. But when your intent is natural language, like through your prompt, is it necessarily the right handoff point? So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to do more of that, like you said, to actually get much closer to the business and to change that endless sort of backlog shuffling, requirements capture. Because if you can write a document with your requirements in it, then you can probably write a prompt with your requirements in it. That's not a dissimilar process. And how much waste are we adding with this, the way we currently work with these handoffs?
And I think it will lead to an interesting insight about what the nature of programming really is. Being big fans of pair programming, you worked at Pivotal. We worked with Pivotal, and we're very big fans of XP and pairing. A common objection was, why have you got two people doing one person's job? It's like, well, it's not the typing that's the slow part. It's the figuring out the how to implement this. And there's something, I think, about transmuting requirements that's somewhat vague and in natural human language into what is, for the given context, the most simple possible solution. Like there's always a minimal amount of complexity when you're implementing anything beyond which, like, it can't be reduced further because, what you're doing might be quite complicated. If you're ordering an Uber, the background information flows in that, or there's a fundamental complexity to that can't be resolved any further. And so the job of a developer is often like refining complexity down. It's like chipping stuff away off of a stone to find the truth inside for that given requirement. What is the fundamental, unavoidable complexity there? And if Gen AI solutions need that amount of guidance, maybe we will end up with product people becoming much more like programmers in the work they will be doing, as well as all the other wonderful things that product people do about finding out, customer needs, balancing out with the business and all of that kind of entire domain. Maybe they will end up kind of taking on that reduction of complexity of what is the fundamental computation that needs to happen here, because I'm going to need to explain it to, Claude Code or whatever.
It's going to be fascinating because I already know like a load of product people who are just so excited about like vibe coding and the fact that they can build a prototype. They're going Lovable. They build you go in Cursor. You get so far on your own as a product person, which is very liberating. You're not having to negotiate for like prioritization or like scope and things like that. But there's a hell of a difference between what you can prototype and what is going to make like a reliable and scalable, like, enterprise kind of grade production system. And I think that's where we'll always need developers, and where we'll benefit from having, strong opinions about how we build things right. But yeah, I think product people who are enthused to get hands-on have no barriers to entry now, and I think they sort of move closer to development. And then developers who are not heads down in code and syntax all day long have this also this opportunity to have more impact through their work by taking a step back and going like, okay, well, how do we solve this problem? Like, what problem are we solving? So I think there's an opportunity on both sides, and we're going to meet in the middle in like a lovely, happy place. But
yeah, I like the idea of kind of.
I'm an eternal optimist, aren't I? Or it's going to be a different kind of like organizational war than the ones we fought before, like dev versus ops, like product versus engineering.
Yes, let's try and hope that there aren't more silos that created more fences to chuck things up and over in the AI native future. You mentioned earlier some of the work you're doing with Leapsa. Are you able to go into any of the other kind of work that you've been doing in the last year, more on the consultative side, without obviously telling us any confidential information, but the kind of challenges that you're seeing or the kind of problems that people have that are common?
I love to talk about them because I'm very fussy about who I work with. Really, I have to kind of believe that I believe in the product and the team. The first folks I started working with are Helix ML, and I talked about the platform engineering presentation I did at KubeCon earlier this year, and that was very much based on the work I've done with Helix. So they've taken the position, and I think is a valid one, that more and more enterprises will want to run open LLM models on their own infrastructure. And they won't trust their data, especially not customer data, sensitive financial data, to one of the big LLM platforms, because you don't know what they're using for their training data. And also, in a regulated industry, you just simply can't like delegate that much responsibility to a black box solution, essentially. And so they've built a platform around that, and it's very focused on developer tooling. So it's a developer toolkit that allows you to do things like CI/CD for Gen AI applications powered by your on-prem LLM. So I learned about this platform, and I was like, hell yeah. I can see that people are going to want this. And so I started working with them. They were the very first people I started working with. And that's great. We actually have Helix 2.0 coming out in July. I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to have said that or not, but look out for Helix 2.0 because that's got some amazing new features in it. So Helix sort of solved that problem of data security, data sovereignty, whilst also attacking the developer experience space. So what I was talking about earlier with the cognitive load and the reinvention that's going on at the moment with all the teams kind of picking up their different sort of AI toolkit and building in a slightly different way, it kind of solves for that problem. There's like a standardized way of integrating these things into your applications. Another company who I'm working with, and the AI Security Collective, which is a community in London, but I'm working with MindGuard, and they are a security tool. But the thing I love about them is they've spun out of academia. So this is a team of researchers and academics who have been working for years on the problem of how can we detect the vulnerabilities that exist in models? So you've probably heard of like jailbreaking and things like that, or you can sort of, sometimes you can extract training data from models using certain techniques. So they have built a solution that detects those AI-specific vulnerabilities within the models that you're using. And so it's a tool for red teaming, but also if you know which ways you're vulnerable, you can actually defend against it. If you don't know how you're vulnerable, you can't do that. And I'm always amazed at the number of companies who are willing to put an LLM-based, prompt-based interface in front of their customers in terms of chatbots and things like that, because you do not know, like most of these teams, they do not know how they could be easily manipulated. And so MindGuard have done, like, they have an amazing product already because it was born out of academia, it was born out of research that says, we think we've proved that we can detect these type of vulnerabilities, and now they're taking that to market. I'm going to keep plugging, and then Leapter. But the beauty of Leapter is that you create software solutions that can be understood and reasoned about very easily as a human, instead of having sprawling AI generated code and having to go by line to line to make sure it's good and review it. You get this visualization layer on top that helps you go, is this correct? Futuria is where I build my AI agents. That's the most fun out of them all, actually, because I spend my days building teams of AI agents. And we operate much more, I would say, away from the developer and the infrastructure sphere of organizations. We operate in the knowledge layer. So we pull together all of this enterprise knowledge and we build processes around it so that we can, with our sort of agentic teams, we can achieve the same outputs at the same quality of like multiple teams of humans that would take weeks to produce, because we don't have handoffs, we have access to the right data, and we can facilitate the process automatically. So that's very exciting as well.
AI for the rest of us, 2025. When's the date?
It is the 15th and 16th of October. And for the listeners who have persevered through our meandering conversation, there's a 20% discount code. So WAVE20 will get you 20% off a ticket for the conference if you've heard enough that you're ready to commit and join us for an AI learning experience like no other.
Hannah Foxwell, it's been a pleasure, as it always is when we talk. Hopefully we will get to speak again, and I will see you at the next event. So there you have it. Thank you very much to Hannah for joining me on this episode and for generously sharing that discount code. So if you want 20% off of your ticket to AI for the Rest of Us London 2025, use the discount code WAVE20. As always, if you have any feedback for us, please get in touch via wavesofinnovation@resync.com. That's re-cinq.com. We'd love to hear what you think needs improving and suggestions for other guests. If you've enjoyed this, please share it with other people. Be good to each other, and we'll see you in the next one.